Yeah, so portion control is something that's actually quite easy to implement if you've got, you're doing your shopping yourself, you're consistently preparing meals for yourself, etc. It's very easy to implement portion control then, because the thing is, people sometimes get really hung up on, oh, should I have like a palm size protein serving or a fist size? And the hand is a nice way of implementing it, but at the same time, like many of the, like, let's say if we stick with protein sources in terms of meat, like they're often pre-portioned. It's kind of done for you in the sense that, like, if you're having a salmon fillet, it's very easy to say to someone in prescribing portion control, have one salmon fillet. Like, yeah, some of them might be 150 grams, some of them might be 200 grams, but ultimately, once something is consistent over time, you're able to make little tweaks here and there. Same thing, like one medium chicken breast might be the portion that you're prescribing with regards to protein, and then you just aim to maintain that over time. And ultimately, the aim of portion control is not just to restrict calories. Like, that's not just the goal. It's also to make sure that you're getting your appropriate macronutrients. So that's why, I started with protein there. It could be, right, roughly a palm size serving of protein might be something that you give to someone, assuming they're consuming, let's say, animal products, might give them about 25 grams of protein or so. Of course, that varies considerably with hand size and everything, but the idea is that it scales together. If you got a bigger person and you want them to eat a much higher protein diet, you might double up the portion or whatever. But the hand can be useful. So you can measure things in terms of size of your palm, size of your fists, a handful, and then also, thumbs or finger size portions for things like fats. So there are different things that we would prescribe for people sometimes. Personally, I'm more of a fan of having someone tell me what they like to eat on a regular basis, and then getting a rough idea of what that portion would look like. So, for example, it might be one medium chicken breast plus half a serving of microwave rice plus a fistful of vegetables. Like, that's really simple to implement, because if you're eating microwave rice, like, there you go, that's two servings in the bag, one for now, one for tomorrow. The chicken breast, it's already there, the portion is there. And then your vegetables, take them out of the freezer, handful into the microwave, 2 minutes, done. Simple. That's really simple to implement. But the good thing about portion control is that having rough, ideas of what your portions should look like is also something that helps when you're eating out, because you might get served up a big meal. Let's say you go to a restaurant, you get a carvery dinner like turkey and ham or something, let's say, and the plate is huge, it's much bigger than you would normally have. Then you might just say, right, I'm going to have my fistful of carbohydrates like I normally have, and I'm going to leave the rest behind. And then the same with the meat. The meat looks roughly okay. There's additional sauce, so I just might factor that in by having a little bit less fat at my next meal, for example. So if you've got a rough meal structure, like a meal template that you stick to, that's a really nice way of structuring your meals. Obviously, it's something that requires tweaking then over time, because you might come up with an initial structure. So, for example, I might say, right, this person's on requires around 2,000 calories. So, they're 70 kilos body weight, and I want them to have 140 grams of protein. So I know they need to be getting over 40 grams per meal, let's say. Then we might initially put all that in practice. So, say 3 meals, fistful of carbohydrates at each meal, two thumbfuls of fat at each meal, and a palm and a half, let's say, of protein at each meal. And then over time, what we might do is, right, weight loss is not happening. We're trying to lose weight. Why don't we take out the fat for meal 3, and you can keep on going with your approach? So that might mean you used to cook your eggs in that meal as whole eggs in olive oil, and now you're just having them as 2 whole eggs, 2 whites, or something like that. So once you've got consistency, it's quite easy to implement. And there's other things that do fit into portion control as well. Such as, like, it varies. Some people find these things helpful, some people not so much. But for example, the types of, it might be types of spoon that you eat with. A lot of bodybuilders do this, where they will use a small spoon to eat their porridge, a baby spoon, instead of a large tablespoon, because effectively what they're doing then is self-regulating how fast they can eat and how much they can eat per bite. It slows you down, and there's kind of more intrinsic portion control as a result of you feeling fuller a bit sooner. So there's little tips like that that can go along with portion control. But I think that's the nuts and bolts of it, really.
100%. And like, as you were saying, like that's an easy approach to take, whether you are coming to this from the start or you're coming to this from a really educated position around nutrition, like you've calorie and macro tracked or whatever beforehand, right? Now, obviously, it is easier to do if you already are able to decipher foods. Like you're like, oh, olive oil, that's fats, right? I know that, right? Or you're again, like you're saying, eggs. You might be like, oh, is that protein or is that fat? Like you don't know how to qualify the different macronutrient composition of these different foods, right? So it is obviously easier if you come to this with more nutritional knowledge. However, that's not to say that you can't build that knowledge over time, right? And this is especially a case if you use that kind of method that we use, or like Gary outlined there, where it's like, what are you currently eating, right? Let's actually break that down, right? So this is, okay, this would be your protein source of this meal. No, there's actually no protein source of this meal. So we need to bring one in here, right? Like if you actually go through the structure that you currently have, now this is obviously easy for us to do, critiquing someone's diet effectively, but it's also something that you can do yourself if you again learn some basic nutrition stuff, right? And again, this is why we generally use calorie and macro tracking initially, because it kind of has that built in. It kind of makes you more aware of protein, carbs, fats, etc. Whereas if you don't do that initially, it can be a little bit hard to educate yourself on that. Like it definitely can be done. There was a time before calorie and macro tracking and people were still able to get in shape, right? So that's portion control, very handy, very useful. It's where we are, we arguably get most people to go to, right?